Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Now, when Labor handed down its budget 2 weeks ago, Australians were hopeful. Hopeful that it would ease the cost of living crisis that leaves them with very little at the end of each week, with rising mortgages, energy bills and groceries. Hopeful it would rein in spending to bring down inflation and ease the cost of living. Instead, they got a typical Labor high-taxing, high-spending budget. Now, this budget confirms the cost of living will continue to rise, gas and electricity will continue to skyrocket, unemployment will rise and inflation will remain stubbornly high. Real wages are also going backwards. It also confirmed that 10 million Australians will face a tax hike this year, and around 175,000 are projected to lose their jobs. And small businesses are doing it tough, Deputy Speaker. And I've been out in my electorate, like many members of parliament, talking to small business, and they're struggling. Revenues are down, costs are up. It's putting pressure on them, unfortunately. And they don't want to do this, but one of the key variable costs that they can control, because they can't control their fixed costs like rent and energy, is wages, and they're having to reduce people's hours and let people go. And that's a devastating impact of the economic challenges that we face at the moment. Because Australians are doing it tough. The number of businesses that have gone into insolvency has almost doubled in the past year. And the typical Australian family is $25,000 worse off compared to a year ago. And Lifeline reports 80% of its calls now relate to cost of living pressures. And that's why the Coalition is committed to restoring the number of Medicare subsidised psychological sessions from 10 to 20. And it's simple. The only way to ease the cost of living crisis and bring down inflation is to rein in government spending. But this budget failed to do so. It fails hard-working Australians when they need a plan to address inflation and the cost of living crisis. And this government has made inflation worse. Since coming to power, they've increased government discretionary spending by $44 billion. That's just the on-budget spending, not to mention the off-budget spending of over $45 billion. Now, we know through Chris Richardson, a well-respected economist, that every $6 billion in net government spending requires at least a 0.25% increase in interest rates to balance out that inflationary pressure. So we know that this government's decisions are driving inflation and are forcing the RBA to continue to increase interest rates, punishing all Australians. In fact, the only area Labor has reined in spending seems to be in my community of Casey, where almost all of our road infrastructure projects have been axed or are considered for cuts, including $100 million in sealing the Roads for Community programs that this government agreed to when in opposition, the Wellington Road duplication, and now Canterbury Road and Killara Road upgrades are under review. Despite this, they've still found $2.2 billion to redirect to Daniel Andrews' suburban rail loop. Residents in my community deserve to get home safer and sooner, and they want to see these projects delivered. And the question for all Australians really is, are you better off today than you were a year ago? Think of how hard Labor has made things after just 1 year. Now, the Prime Minister may have promised to reduce your power bills by $275, including 30 times after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but he's yet to deliver on that promise. Our power bills have only gone up and will continue to go up. Those opposite benefited from the 9 years of strong economic management by the Coalition. The books they inherited had the lowest unemployment rate in almost 50 years, with almost 2 million jobs created over 9 years. When we left office, interest rates were at historic lows. Unemployment was 3.9%. This low level of unemployment was one of the key drivers of the budget improvement announced earlier this month. And I urge this government to continue to start to make decisions to reduce inflation, take pressure off, allow the RBA to get inflation back to the 2 to 3% target, because that's the way all Australians can benefit.
Authorised by Aaron Violi, Liberal Party, Chermside Park.